Hello everybody and welcome to Tuesday Newsday. Today ArenaNet have released a trailer for the next Living World patch. Comes out next Tuesday. It's called Seeds of Truth. Now, it's a pretty short trailer, but there's quite a lot of stuff jam-packed in there. This will be a bit of a crash course for many of us, hopefully, on the origins of the Sylvari and some of the notable events early on in the Sylvari's development, because it looks like this next patch is going to be a big flashback patch for the Living World. Now, remember, there is going to be a big PvP update next week, among other things, but we are still getting Living World. Some people were speculating that that wasn't going to happen at all. No, we're still getting a Living World patch, and it seems to be focused very heavily on Caithe. So I'm going to go ahead and spoil the previous patch for you guys here. Last patch, Caithe kind of betrayed us. We were looking for the egg, and at the last moment she grabbed it from us. She said, "There's no time to explain," and she disappeared, and so many people are now wondering what her motives are. I will say, going into this video, I believe that ArenaNet have had some kind of long-term goal, some long strategy for Caithe for a very long time. You can see many examples in the second novel, Edge of Destiny, and even in early personal story stuff that set Caithe apart, make her very different to the other members of Destiny's Edge, suggest that she has a very dark side to her, and mystery in her past. These were further augmented and made even more interesting in Season 1, when finally we got some semblance of a plot going in terms of the Scarlet arc, and Scarlet telling us in TA Aetherpath, for example, that she knew about Caithe's secret. And you know, last year I mentioned Caithe's secret as it came out, and many of us were quite jaded and seemed to think, oh, this is just some fluff that they've thrown out there, maybe it will never amount to anything. But no, I think they have had this long-term strategy, and this patch is going to be quite huge for figuring out exactly what happened with Caithe. So ArenaNet describe in this trailer they've released, they say, to catch a thief, you must become a thief, but be wary, following Caithe's trail will take you down a strange, dark path. Now, it may just be speculation, but a lot of people are buying into it. It seems like we're going to actually be playing as Caithe in this patch. It does seem like we're going to be taking her place. Many of the shots in this trailer seem to have a bit of a vintage feel. You know, they got kind of this filter going over it that seems like it's going to be some kind of a flashback. The name of the patch itself, Seeds of Truth, suggests that we're going to be getting some deep story about the Sylvari. I'll take this opportunity to remind you guys the birth of the Sylvari, the fact that a human fleeing persecution from the White Mantle, the Massart, his family murdered at their hands, found in a cave, just a random cave in this region of the world that we're currently playing in. Supposedly he found some seeds. He took one of these seeds, he met Ventari later, he planted it, this became the Pale Tree. And so seeds are a big thing when it comes to the Sylvari. It's their birth, and you get the further questions of, hey, where did the seeds come from? And this patch is called the Seeds of Truth. So with so much stuff dancing around, hey, this is to do with the past, how are ArenaNet going to deliver this to us? My belief is, as we know from the end of the last patch, it's our plan to meet with the Pale Tree again. We know that she's damaged, we know that she's injured, we know that things aren't going too well for her right now, but maybe she has some information for us. Last time we spoke to the Pale Tree, she gave us a vision. I think that's what's going to happen here again. We're going to properly go back in time, see some vision, some congealed, manifested scenario produced from the information within the dream, and this is going to give us some key points in Caithe's life. Do I believe this is going to be the be-all and end-all, give us everything about the birth of the Sylvari? No, not at all. I do think it will shine a big light on Caithe, though, and in particular, some of the Sylvari's earliest interactions with the Asura. So as we watch through the trailer here, there are multiple shots you'll see of Inquest-looking bases. And in particular, I don't know about you guys, but this reminds me very heavily of one of the Inquest bases in Metrica Province, in top right of Metrica Province, that you need to go through that Asura gate in the top left of the zone to actually get access to. Looks an awful lot like that. But the question is, why are we seeing so much Inquesty style stuff in this trailer? Well, a key part of the Sylvari's past, again, that you guys may have had slipped from your mind at this point, was their first interaction with some of the other intelligent races out there on Tyria. Many Sylvari stuck to the Grove for a long time, but ultimately they would meet the Asura, who were very near to them, of course both races existing on the Tarnished Coast, and the Asura, little cretins that they are, of course decided, hey, here's this weird plant thing, let's experiment with it. Do remember that even though, as a Guild Wars 2 player, this may not be obvious, Tyria has always been a place that's had plants that move around. Not necessarily sentient and intelligent, but they do move. One of the most common enemies we fight in Guild Wars 1 were the Thornstalkers. Aloe seeds were everywhere. As far south as Elona, there were all kinds of different plants like aboggers, things that resemble Mordremoth's minions even. So this is a common thing, and the Asura will experiment on whatever the hell they damn like. I'm sure they experiment on themselves. So they grabbed these Sylvari and did terrible experiments. That's the general story. More specifically though, we do know exactly who was on the receiving end of these experiments. It was one of the Firstborn named Malamedes. He was the very first Sylvari to meet one of these other races, and it was him, and he is still alive, that was actually being experimented on by the Asura. There's maybe a suggestion that there were other Sylvari too that were, you know, tested on at the hands of the Asura, but he's like the big name. He's the main one, at least the first one. I'll give you guys his wiki summary. He's probably my favorite Firstborn for what it's worth. Maybe only because his name is so cool. But Malamedes is a Firstborn Sylvari, the second one to awaken during the Cycle of Night, and he's the luminary of the Cycle of Night. He is an astronomer and a mathematician. He is credited with charting the skies and bringing mathematics to the Sylvari. He also works to predict the future through current events, as he calls a watcher of the world. He was the first Sylvari to meet with another race, the Asura, who promptly experimented on him. He's very private, much like others born in his cycle, but his students consider him a stern and caring mentor. So what can we glean off of this character? Why may he be important in this next patch? Why even are we seeing any of this Inquest-based stuff? Well, maybe this idea that he somehow works to predict the future and stuff. I don't think that means that he has like prophetic vision like Glint had, for example, but I do think through perhaps a bit of magical inclination, a bit of logic, this guy can help us figure out maybe where Caithe is going. Perhaps we go back to the Pale Tree, we get some kind of vision of Caithe herself from the Pale Tree, but then the Pale Tree also tells us, hey look, Malamedes may be able to help you, and we get some inclusion in his vision there. Maybe there's some relation between the weirdness that's going on with Caithe and her motives and these initial experiments on the Sylvari. I think a mistake a few people in the community are making right now is they love this idea that the Asura were the ones who experimented on Faolain and then somehow caused the creation of the Nightmare Courts. That's not exactly true. Faolain, for starts, didn't create the Nightmare Courts at all. She simply became its leader after its original founder, a second-born Sylvari named Caithe. Now, it is true that Caithe, one of the big tipping points for Caithe in founding the Nightmare Court, in going against the Pale Tree, was because when the Pale Tree was confronted with this fact that the Asura had been experimenting on Sylvari, Caithe wanted revenge, and rightly so from some perspective, I'm sure you guys will agree. But the Pale Tree refused revenge, obviously had been influenced very heavily by Ronan, by Ventari, by the tablet, and decided, no, we're not going to fight the Asura over this. And this was one of those small injustices, one of those little annoying things that was very well written that tipped Caithe over, and ultimately the Nightmare Court was born out of that. But this does not mean that Faolain is necessarily in this patch being experimented on by Asura. I think Faolain could be in this patch. Again, if I'm losing some of you guys, Faolain was Caithe's close lover before the events of the game. Two Firstborn Sylvari. These two, I believe, were some of the first Sylvari to go out and leave the Grove in its entirety and go and explore the world, and they travelled together and they fell in love and in all the wonderment that was Tyria. But ultimately, Faolain turned to Nightmare, while Caithe supposedly remained true to the Pale Tree. Well, now this is getting very muddy, isn't it? Because Caithe seems to be doing something a bit crazy, and when you consider Mordremoth influencing all of this stuff, it becomes a bit of a delicious mystery. To linger a little bit more on the idea of the Inquest stuff, there is a bit of a comment going around. Apparently it's been on Wiki. I actually don't know where confirmation of this is, so don't take it as gospel, though it may be. A lot of people were saying on the Asura side, it was Gw2 in particular who was orchestrating these experiments on Sylvari, on ultimately Malamedes. So Gw2 was a very significant character during the personal story, ultimately died during COE, but was very closely related to Snaf, just as Zodja was, and has been one of our big villains. Again, I don't really know where that was confirmed in the story, but it could mean, if true, that Gw2 will appear in this patch. Again, if true, that the reason we're seeing these Inquest bases is because of these first interactions between the two races. I do like the idea, though I don't agree that the Asura somehow toyed with Sylvari and created some weird warp that manifested itself in the nightmare. I do like the idea that the experiments that were going on then were somehow looking into Mordremoth, the Sylvari's true nature, and maybe the Inquest did glean something back then off of the Sylvari that is irrelevant now for us with Mordremoth. And maybe, somehow, Caithe knew what they found out too a long time ago. As to what it is, I find it very hard to speculate further. So, some other cool little things too, we seem to see towards the end of the video, a door. In fact, it's right at the start of the video and then it's the end. They seem to be setting up that there is some kind of room, some kind of chamber place that we need to go to. And you can see this great glyph, this golden glyph depicting some snakes, light up right at the end of the trailer. Now, what's really interesting about this is straight away you're going to wonder, okay, why are there snakes and stuff being shown on this wall? What is it trying to show us? In the universe already, of course, we know about the Forgotten. They have not appeared in Guild Wars 2, but they were this widespread race, caretakers of Tyria for a long period of time. We met them in Guild Wars 1. They worked closely with Glint, but they seem to have receded into the mist somewhat. And now there seems to be some iconography related to them on this wall somewhere, apparently in Drytop or the Silver Wastes. But what does it mean? What has this got to do with anything I was just talking about? I can't even guess at this point. It seems very kind of randomly thrown in there, except the fact, of course, we were just dealing with Glint's egg, and there's some relation to the Forgotten there. Even more interestingly is, before this patch, maybe this current patch came out, the one before, people did manage to break out of the map. That shaman in particular broke out and found this door. This is located in the Silver Wastes, and back then it had a different image on it. It had a totally different icon on it, which I'll show you guys on the video now in the background. And this is much more interesting. This very clearly shows us this idea of kind of the snakes, but we got these three symbols around it too. These are very important to point out, because these three symbols were seen in Guild Wars 1 in the Crystal Deserts. Now, there's this whole story of we as humans, in order to fight against the Massart, traveled to the Crystal Desert to seek ascension, a process of becoming closer to the gods that will allow us to see the Massart even when they were trying to hide because they were out of phase with reality. But it's not easy to become closer to the gods. It's not something many mortals are able to achieve. We went to the Crystal Desert and undertook 3 great missions, rituals, so that we could prepare ourselves to fight our doppelganger in the Hall of Ascension and ultimately ascend. But each of these 3 missions was represented by one of these stones you're seeing here. And this is one of those phenomenal little callbacks to Guild Wars 1. I mean, the attention to detail, I just love that the devs remember that these small things are here. These just weird little stones representing each mission, plucked back out here in Guild Wars 2 and written on this door now. So what does that suggest? That the people who sort of originally founded the Rites of Ascension and all that kind of stuff, they were active in the Silver Wastes at some point and had some relevance here? How does this tie into Caithe? I'm lost. I'm lost, guys. But I am excited to show you why I'm lost and how many damn different things are going on in this trailer all at once. Not to mention, beyond the story, there are some very interesting things we can see here too. If we are playing as Caithe, kind of all secrety and stealthy and stuff, it does look like this is kind of a stealth mission. You can see some of the Inquest here, they seem to have like vision windows, giant areas, fields of view that if you were to stand in front of them, perhaps that's going to aggro them, lose you an achievement, something like that, get you caught, and you've got to sneak around and you've got to actually do some kind of stealth mechanics. That will mark the first proper time that has appeared in Guild Wars 2. I hope it goes really well because it looks very exciting, and if they start using stealth mechanics and stuff in regular missions, that's really going to spice up the gameplay we experience in Living World for those of us who, you know, are getting a bit tired of just the generic, hey, kill this boss, move along, kill trash, and move along. So that'll be kind of fun. Lastly to mention is the reappearance of the centaurs. Now again, I take you back to the patch name. It's called Seeds of Truth. And the seed, of course, was planted with Ventari and Ronan. Ventari was a centaur. Perhaps these centaurs have got something more to talk to us about the birth of the Pale Tree, but that seems unlikely to me because Ventari was such an oddball himself. That's what made him notable. I don't know why other centaurs would have more information for us, but maybe they have some information about the cave. Maybe this cave is this door we're seeing, and it was sealed away by the Forgotten, or whoever it was that built the Hall of Ascension, had ties to the Massart and all those ancient races and the ancient battle against Mordremoth, and they sealed those seeds away. And it was here that Ronan came, and at the end of this patch, we're going to go to where Ronan was. Don't forget that in the early personal story stuff, if you chose the Where Life Goes, So Too Shall You storyline, all this stuff to do with Malik, we did get another hint at some extra story to do with Ronan that we haven't heard just yet. Incredibly cryptic. Maybe this patch will go into it. I'll leave you guys with this quote. We got from Amaranda the Lonesome, who was a great visionary into the dream. They said, a distant shore and darkness, a root, a cave. You are the seed, speaking about Malik, a Sylvari from another pale tree. What Ronan knew and never told still lingers in the dream. If it still lingers in the dream, maybe this is what we're about to see. Or maybe what Caithe once saw. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll let you know any updates, community speculation, even before the patch comes out. Looks like it's going to be a good one. And I guess I'll see you next time. Have a good evening, everyone.